I thought I will never moderate a session with such a title, Who Runs the News Agenda? For an editor, that was a nonsensical question a few years ago. In the recent past, one could even have said big corporations or the politicians or the lefties or the righties or the conservatives or the liberals, they run the news agenda. Nope, well, none of them. We knew that it was us, the professional media, with our concepts and guidelines, our own production and distribution channels that ultimately used to run the news agenda. And no place would be more appropriate to illustrate this affirmation than this city, the epicenter of Watergate. But life has changed. Do we still run and reign over the news? Is this new media landscape outsourcing for an algorithm the editorial criteria and actually the whole business of journalism? Did we outsource it, the news agenda to Facebook, Google, and others? This session had already a tremendous importance before instant articles, the controversial initiative of Facebook in publishing directly on its pages stories from some of the most prestigious media outlets in the world, among them New York Times, Guardian, and BBC News. Now while we are still digesting the impact of instant articles, this surely is going to be a hot issue in our next hour. The close connections between technology and journalism are actually a fact of the past, and they will just increase day by day, no one doubts. But the question now is, will Silicon Valley be the new Fleet Street? What are the implications if this is true? What are the consequences, not just for the media industry, but for society, for democracy? Should we or can we do something to revert the trend and to reclaim our role on the stage? Well, maybe too many interrogations, but that's why we gather here some of the sharpest minds in the media environment. Well, they have the difficult task to try to solve these tricky questions, which are all about our future and relevance. The first to speak will be Emily Bell, and I invite Emily here to the podium. Please, Emily.
Hello, thank you very much indeed, Marcelo. I'm here to frame the debate, if you like. About a year ago, I was asked by the Reuters Institute in Oxford to think of a theme. For some reason, people think that academics, I am a journalist, but I'm also an academic, can think of big themes. And I came up with what sounded like a rather lame proposition, which is Silicon Valley and journalism, make up or break up. My sort of hypothesis being that everything I was seeing was suggesting that the social web, which journalism has been integrating itself into for the past decade, was turning into actually a slightly different relationship, power relationship between publishers and a small number of particularly social platform companies and Google, all based in Silicon Valley. So first of all, when we talk about technology, of course, the news industry has always had its agenda set by technology, but it's always been our own technology. Paul Reuter owned his own pigeons. At The Guardian, we had our own printing press. Even broadcasters have been able to rely on spectrum allocation and regulation to be reasonably clear about who is in control and what they need to do to get their stories to users. So my thesis is really straightforward, which is that the free press, in as much as it still exists, and I think it's in many ways it's very vibrant, is no longer owned by publishers. It's owned by these platform companies. What evidence do we have to support that? First of all, anyone who was here for the 3 o'clock session would have seen Amy Mitchell present Pew research into millennials, whoever they are. Incidentally, I like the trend of describing millennials as snake people, but the young people who became adults in or around 2000, 60% of them get their local political news from Facebook. Now, Facebook isn't a number of, it's not television. it's one company. So, you know, we already know that in the States, 30% of adults get some news or their principal news feed from Facebook. Again, not a range of social platform companies, but one platform company. You can add to that these days Snapchat, Twitter, Instagram, incidentally owned by Facebook for those who don't keep up with the M&A world, WhatsApp, also owned by Facebook. Google, of course, YouTube has been such an important video sharing platform since its inception almost 10 years ago. So I worried at the time that I might be premature or doing what journalists tend to do, which is over-describing a problem when I was set up to talk about this sort of about 6 months ago. And obviously I should be delighted that, in fact, I wasn't completely wrong in thinking that this was going to be a theme for the future. But I think even within the last 6 months, we've seen that probably this move, this paradigm shift for publishers has been much quicker than we thought. So for instance, just in the last few months, we've seen in January in the US, we saw Snapchat open something called the Discover channel, which is a partnership channel for publishers. Has well-known names on it like CNN, Cosmopolitan, ESPN, the Daily Mail, where publishers put their stories, their short videos, their pictures straight into the mobile app. Then we heard whisper of and got confirmation of something called Facebook Instant Articles, which was launched this month. And again, at the moment, it's actually quite hard to find any articles which are being published through Facebook Instant Articles, but it is a real partnership between a number of publishers in the States. The New York Times is probably the most surprising member of that partnership, just because of its, perhaps, you know, sort of, one would have seen it sort of very much in the vanguard, if you like, of feeling that it had the strength and power to compete with or stand apart from platforms. National Geographic is in that partnership. The Guardian, where I used to work and I'm still a director, is in that partnership. And what this means again is that publishers are putting their articles or have the opportunity to put their articles directly into the Facebook app. What was really amazing, if you like, about the Facebook announcement was how I think it sort of really focused and electrified every news organization that I spoke to, from the smallest local publishers to the largest international publishers. And there were two very distinct reactions. One reaction was, we are worried about what we might be giving up. And the other reaction was, we are worried that we are not included in the people who are part of this experiment, which I think really nicely sort of summarizes, if you like, the dilemma that publishers and journalists find themselves in. First of all, how do we know what we're giving up? Secondly, what if we don't cooperate? If we're left behind, what do we lose? We all know why this is happening. It's happening really because in the mobile world, we're looking at a very different type of user experience. We're looking at an app world where, for instance, Facebook can optimize how our articles are seen. If you ask them why are you going down the route of instant articles, they will say for a better user experience. On average, news sites take a page that you click through to on Facebook to a news site takes, they say, about 8 seconds to load, because many publishers still don't optimize well for mobile. What I just wanted to do then was sort of outline. Now, I don't feel personally, I feel neither hostile or positive. I think that this opportunity, this presents lots of challenges and problems and a number of opportunities. And I just want to outline, first of all, the problems and then the opportunities in this paradigm shift, and then throw 2 or 3 things that we might want to talk about in terms of how we should change this engagement. So first of all, the problems. If we no longer control the paths that our stories or our videos take to the outside world, to readers and viewers, I think that this presents a really interesting both business problem and also a civic problem. The business problem is obvious, which is if we don't control the paths that our journalism takes to the outside world, how can we gather enough data? How can we have control of our revenues? Losing control of distribution is a really significant change for the journalism industry. For civic society, I think it's an even bigger problem in a way, because the way that Facebook decides what we're going to see is based on an algorithm, the Facebook newsfeeder algorithm. And a description of this algorithm is relatively benign. It says, well, it just shows you what people that you're friends with are reading and recommends those to you. But to some extent, we have to take the word of Facebook when they say this is how it works, because really that's the secret source of their business model. And unlike any other period in regulated media history, we're potentially going into a time where that relationship between us producing something and it being published to the outside world is completely unknowable, both to citizens who are consuming it and also to publishers who are putting it onto the platform. I think that it doesn't take too much imagination to see that, and I don't think for 1 second Facebook have evil intent here. I think they have good intent. I think they want a better experience for their users. But whether a better experience for their users is going to add up to something where we have the kind of equality of access, or at least the transparency in news supply, is a very different question. I think the second problem is when we become dependent as an industry on intrinsically non-journalistic platforms, it obviously alters both the format of our journalism and potentially the revenue streams. What I mean by that is that the people who set the priorities for the type of journalism that we do and the type of revenue that we will earn, that would be a combination, if you like, of Facebook, which is essentially an engineering company, and Wall Street, which is monitoring the stock price. So if Facebook, when Mark Zuckerberg said last year, Facebook is going to be, video is going to be the most important thing for Facebook next year. If you're a news supplier, that means that in all likelihood, your video posts will come out at the top of your feed. If you don't have video, then that's tough luck. Again, if the advertising model is dictated by Facebook, and I'm using Facebook here as a proxy. It could easily be Snapchat, it could easily be WhatsApp, it could easily be the next platform. And the third problem is, of course, one that we're very used to in journalism, which is we get all of the cost, they get the majority of the revenue. Now, there's nothing we can do about that, because that's how we've organized our industry to be in a technological world. And until we've actually got something which competes with or will sit alongside or challenges that, we are always going to be in a position of weakness, in a relationship of weakness. But I want to set against that the opportunities as well. So the first and obvious one is that you will just get audiences of a size and type that it simply would not be possible to reach in an analog or even in a Web 1 or Web 2 world. So when you talk about the 1.4 billion active user group, 1.4 billion active users on Facebook, you look at the rate of growth at Snapchat, you look at the rate of growth at WhatsApp, you look at the way that the younger audience is becoming the dominant media platform. These apps are becoming the dominant media platform for a whole swath of the audience under 30. Then you know that if you don't embrace this, that you will be missing out on a particular type of the audience. I think also there's another great opportunity here, which is we have something that the social platforms need, which is we have issues about publishing, we have knowledge of publishing risk, we have knowledge of how to deal with the ethical framework and some of the sort of presentational issues of publishing. Now we might say, well, why would they want to know that? I think it's been big news for the social platforms in the last 2 years that it is no longer possible to say we are just a platform. It's become impossible to sustain the argument that says we have no responsibility to people who upload content, and we have no responsibility to people who are affected by it. We probably saw this most vividly last summer when Dick Costolo, who's the chief executive of Twitter, made a public statement saying that the ISIS videos containing footage of James Foley's beheading would, if they were found on any accounts, those accounts would be shut down. It's the first time to my knowledge that Twitter has made a really explicit, non-terms of use judgment about something which is running on its network. So these platforms are going to have to become editorial. They already are editorial, but they're going to have to acknowledge that role. We've seen Google in Europe saying that it wants to partner with publishers. That's partly to stave off the interest of regulators, but it's also, if you like, an acknowledgement for the first time again that they are an active part of the news ecosystem. And perhaps the good news for journalism is that if you have 3 or 4 really giant, sort of really significant players competing to own the content, to own the pipe, to own the app, to own the user experience, if journalism becomes one of the value propositions within that competition, then perhaps for the first time in a decade we have some leverage over that market. Do we embrace or do we reject? Do we see this as a threat to us? Because obviously, you know, one of the problems is if we have an opportunity to forge a new partnership with a much more powerful partner, we don't necessarily get to state the terms on which that partnership is changed. So Cara Swisher, a great technology journalist, said 2 weeks ago, the Facebook deal will not be good for publishers. What will happen is they will become addicted to the revenues and data that Facebook gives them, and then at some point in the future, they will start to charge publishers for that access. This will be good for Facebook, but it won't be good for publishers. So what can we do? So I think, as I say, I'm not here to advocate for either side. I think we have a panel who are better placed to summarize what our options are and debate this, and hopefully you will join in too. I think we're in a phase now where we have to do both, where we have to both embrace the current opportunities of the platforms, but we also have to maintain a level of independence. And that sounds very easy, but it's actually very hard to do. 2 things which might be useful to discuss, one of which is there is very little cross-industry. There's very little cross-industry cooperation in this. I'm sure we've all been in the position where our publishers are delighted to go and meet with Facebook. They're delighted to go and meet with Google. They're not so delighted to meet with what they see as competitors within the world of journalism. In a way, that has to change. I think the other thing is I see very little understanding still within journalism companies really of what these changes mean, because we're still not actually technologically literate enough at our hearts to be able to have an equal conversation with Silicon Valley companies. And I think we have to change that, and we have to educate ourselves. And then thirdly, we have to, I think, continue both to experiment with and invest in our own technology. My guess is the next phase of this changing paradigm will be the temptation for news organizations to ditch advertising departments, to ditch technology departments, and to do exactly what the social platforms hint at, which is just do the journalism. I don't think that that's a particularly, we would only be putting ourselves in a worse position if that were to happen. So at this time, when somebody seems to be coming up with big technological solutions, I think it makes it even more important that we invest in technology. As I say, at the moment, there are no, I think, right answers to this. And there may be people in the room who come from very different parts of the world who say, we just don't see this happening. I think the American experience and some of the European experience suggests that it is happening. I think in the Far East it's also happening with different platforms. But I'll be very interested to hear both what the panel think about this and also what you as editors think about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily.